Back to the budget speech now. Finance Minister Tito Mboweni, of course, says government will increase spending to nearly 2 trillion rand after significant cuts in expenditure. Education, health and social development will receive the largest contributions, but there have been significant cuts as well. The public sector looks set to see large amounts of money being cut. Let's get some reaction from that speech. COSATU's first Deputy President, Michael Shingange, joins us. Michael, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. I looked at your media statement on the budget speech. You say the battle lines have been drawn.
Exactly. Battle lines have been drawn because for us, the highlight of this budget speech is a direct attack on the workers, in particular the public sector workers, because never before, particularly in the democratic government, that existing rights of workers can be just 5 minutes before midnight reduced to nothing like that. I mean, there's never been a downward variation of any collective agreement that existed in any bargaining council in the past. So this is a direct attack on workers, and I think that they are in for a big fight because if there's something that they are looking for, which is a stability, they are going to get the opposite of it because this, in our view, they've just simply provoked workers to the bone.
And they've reneged on a deal from 2018, of course. That's
a point. What irks us is not just about the talk about cutting the wage bill, as they've been saying so consistent over the past 3 to 4 years, including the threatening to retrench workers, even though today, admittedly, is that in fact the head count of workers have gone down. So the classroom are becoming fuller, the hospital are becoming full, and there are no nurses adequately enough. What irks us is the fact that we have got a 3-year multi-term deal, something that workers don't usually want. They always want to negotiate on a year-to-year basis because they know that the economy and the inflation changes every year. But it was a compromise on the part of workers. Now we're on the last financial year of this 3-year agreement, and then the workers are expecting that on the 1st of April they must get their increase. The employer says, no, we can't afford, we're actually pulling out. Yeah. It's something that is unheard of.
So what do you expect in your fight back? Do we see mass protests? Do we see you refusing to budge on this actual amount that you're supposed to get?
What we can promise is that it's not going to happen because there's no unilateral implementation or changing of any collective agreement that is ever allowed by law in this country. It takes 2 parties to agree or to amend a resolution. Workers are not going, there's no trade union worth of its salt that's going to sit in a bargaining council and negotiate to change the conditions of service of workers for which they fought for hard and negotiated and agreed. So the employer will have to see what they do with it, but there's no way that unions are going to agree. And if they're there and implement it unilaterally, and then it means the whole state public service is going to come to a standstill because no single worker that is going to accept that they're not going to get an increase in this in the economy that is performing so badly and affecting on the workers that on average each one of the public services is taking care of not more than 7 people. Yeah. And we're not just talking about the 1.5 million workers, we're also talking about the millions of the relatives that are taken care of by the meager salary that we are getting.
So you're saying that we could see police, healthcare workers, etc. on the streets protesting if government pushes through with this?
Because this is the attack on the police, this is the attack on the nurses and the doctors and the cleaners and the securities. They are not talking about taking responsibility for them having run down the state over the past 10 years. They're not talking about the responsibility about the affluent lifestyle that they're living, including the corruption that is going on. The budget didn't say anything about how is that is going to cap the wasteful expenditure that the Auditor General year in and year out says that we're losing 10% of the budget. They're not saying anything. They're not saying anything about how they're going to recover the debt in ESCOM that is owed by the government departments and municipalities. We have thought that you will say as a minister, I'm not going to give you your allocation if you're not paying ESCOM that you're in. But instead they're going to the poor workers that are delivering service under extreme conditions and underpaid and understaffed.
It looks like COSATU and the ANC are not in line when it comes to this budget speech. So what do you do as part of the tripartite alliance to actually raise that as a matter of concern?
When it comes to this thing of workers, we have no time for politics. We are looking after our members here. It can say whatever it wants. It's a governing party. We are looking out of our members. We are looking out of the poor and the unemployed people in this country. That is why, at some point, as COSATU, we have proposed some measures to try and respond to the economic development document that Tito Mboweni will have proposed earlier on, and also have proposed how to salvage the SOEs, in particular at ESCOM. They're throwing that thing out of the window. They're attacking directly the workers. So the ANC can say what they want to say, but there's no way that the workers are going to listen to anybody else who wants to attack their fundamental rights, their earnings and those of their families.
So some would argue that what Tito Mboweni said is out of touch with the ANC's radical economic transformation policies. What's your action in that regard as the tripartite alliance to try and see that back in motion? Because it's not being implemented in government, clearly.
Of course, that has been a problem of a number of ministers of Treasury and many other ministers in government, including the government in its totality, that you say something else in your election manifesto, you go to government, you say something else. For instance, this thing that is announcing that is still going to introduce a bill on establishing of a state-owned bank. To us, it's a matter that should have happened a long time ago. The issue of establishing a sovereign wealth fund, by the time the bill is completed, there will be no resources from which you must get money in order to put the savings into the sovereign wealth bill. We think there's a delaying tactics. It says very little about the acceleration of the implementation of national health insurance. It says very little about the issue of the national minimum wage. So our view is that it's true. It's not looking at radically transforming the economy. Instead, the very few people that are in employment, that are paying tax, that are taking care of the unemployed, they are the ones that are being attacked and then squeezed more and more. And that's something that we're not going to stand by and watch.
So what do we see happen going up into the local government elections next year then?
We'll cross that bridge when we come. For now, we're dealing with the immediate issue. The immediate issue that's workers, they want the increase on the 1st of April. And anything other than that is going to be war.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. That was COSATU's first Deputy President, Michael Shingange.